Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Samantha Denmoro Dineros, and this is the work of Group 2 in our case analysis titled Lack of Understanding About Sex Education Among Young People. Our group members are Ate Cortez Alona Rubion, De La Torre Daisy May, De Vera Margaret Rain, Dinalo Erica, Dinero Samantha D, Diraili Yan, and lastly, Donato Virtual. Introduction. Our education system is failing our students. Due to lack of sex education, young people are practicing unsafe sex that results in unwanted teenage pregnancies, spread of STDs and AIDS, and other sexually transmitted diseases. A lot of people who suffer from these problems are embarrassed to ask for help. The reason is people who do premarital sex are shamed and judged by our society. Dagdag ko lang po that unwanted teenage pregnancies result the high risk of complications to the person carrying the fetus, knowing that most teens' bodies are not fully developed and some of them choose abortion that also have a higher risk of infection that causes death. Not having proper knowledge about sex education is the reason why we have high population that causes poverty.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. In the Philippines, sex education is still a hot debate on whether it will be implemented or not. It was opposed by some religious groups who claimed that sex education encouraged teenagers to be more sexually active and they will be immoral. Philippines is a Catholic country and the center of Christianity in Asia. Social problems still exist such as prostitution, which remain as strong, high figures of unwanted pregnancy, fast population growth rate, and the increasing alarming rate of HIV. The problems of pregnant unwed teenagers are among the most difficult and challenging that those working in health, education, and social services. These illegitimate pregnancies may have several traumatic consequences for the adolescent, her partner, her family, and especially to her unborn child. Majority of the Filipinos favored sex education in all schools. So what are the importance of the sex education in our country? Schools should not educate students only about sex, but also about the safe sex practices and pregnancy prevention methods. It promotes ideas such as when is the right time to marry, the challenges of being a teenage mom, and the difference between love and lust. Sex education will open the teenager's mind on the effects of engaging in premarital sex and unsafe sex, and will be a daily reminder that there is always a proper way and time to do things. Thank you.
Background: Sex education in the Philippines. The general purpose of sex education is to inform youth on topics including sex, sexuality, and bodily development. Quality sex education can lead to better prevention in STDs and unwanted pregnancy. Furthermore, it decreases the risk of having unsafe sex and increases in responsible family planning. To help address issues like overpopulation, high rates of teen pregnancy, and the rise of HIV. The Philippines is gradually implementing sex education and accessibility to contraceptives. So, why sex education? Because we are now seeing in our society the continuous increase of teenage pregnancy and premarital sex in the country. Here in our case analysis, we have put what should be done to avoid them, such as the use of contraceptives and injectables or implants. This is also where you'll read about the importance of studying sex education for our country.
Education is an instruction of issues relating to human sexuality, including emotional relationship and responsibility of a person to his or her own body. In addition, sex education are including the following: human sexual anatomy, sexual activity, sexual reproduction, age of consent, reproductive health, reproductive rights, safe sex, birth control, and sexual abstinence, in which a person should learn to avoid teenage pregnancy and mostly like diseases like AIDS, HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, primary and secondary syphilis. In addition to teaching us about human sexuality, sex education helps us prevent sex-related illness like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and primary and secondary syphilis, which are common in other nations like US. In addition to the diseases that can be contracted through sex, such as HIV and AIDS, epidemics that are prevalent in the Philippines. Also, sex education is approved by government to educate children on how to take care of their body and maintain their dignity as a human person. Students have less focus on learning sex education that may result of a popular problem in each country, which is early teenage pregnancy. This may help the parents to educate their children in the future. Sex education will teach us to value our own bodies and human dignity.
Thank you, Miss Margaret. Now we're done in the introduction and background of sex education. Now let's proceed to problem identification. Problem number 1, lack of sexual education support in Philippines. The lack of sex education in the Philippines can lead to unprotected sex, an increase in the number of HIV cases, and unwanted pregnancies. According to a study titled The Current Situation and Issues of Sexual Health Education by School Nurses in Muntinlupa City, Philippines by Yuko Tanaka, Geraldine Ordones, and other more, adolescents in the Philippines are becoming more likely to contract STDs and become pregnant while still in their teens. School nurses are supposed to provide pupils with pertinent reproductive health education and high-quality healthcare services in order to understand school health issues in the Philippines. This study examines the current situation of sexual health education being provided by school nurses in Muntinlupa City. The most common health issues were poor mental health, malnutrition, and childbearing. School nurses required expertise in areas including STDs, mental health, sex education, safe sex, unplanned pregnancy, and child nutrition. Problem number 2, early age sexual harassment. Adult violence or sexual abuse against children may arise from their insufficient sex education. Children should be taught about early sexuality education by their parents so that they have the proper understanding of it and know how to handle and care for it. According to a study titled Sex Education in the Context of Indonesian Early Childhood by Davik Chairil, very few people, especially parents who are concerned about their sexual education and sex education, value sex. Due to the belief that their children are already aware of sex, many parents choose not to teach it to them. Talking about the issue of sex in children is difficult at the moment since sex is still seen as something that only adults engage in. To prevent youngsters from making poor decisions in life, sex education must be taught to them. The goal of sex education for young children is to reduce anxiety and fear associated with sexual adaptation and development by providing an appropriate understanding of physical, mental, and emotional maturation procedure. Sex education is provided beginning at age 5, then at age 1 to 5, and ages 5 to 10.
Third problem here is rising teenage pregnancy rates. The number of young individuals who become pregnant at the age of 17 to 11 years old may rise even further if teenagers lack understanding about this issue. When this occurs, a nation, especially here in the Philippines, would likely experience an increased population at the same time as a possible drop in demand in the growth of our economy. In accordance with the article of National Nutrition Council entitled Negative Impacts of Teenage Pregnancy in the Philippines, it says early motherhood can have a negative impact on health and pose a risk to the nation's ability to grow economically. The country suffers economic costs because pregnant teenagers have become less likely to complete higher education and have lower lifetime earning potential. When teenage pregnancy is normalized, teen parents may have a negative effect on income that will cause their poverty and hunger. Due to the constant increase in the price of goods and the unsettled problems here in the Philippines, young parents may face a heavy burden these days. Lastly, our fourth problem is being infected with the HIV or human immunodeficiency virus or AIDS. Another problem that a country is facing is the presence of HIV or human immunodeficiency virus, which is a disease for that there is no medicine. There may be some, but that is the only way to prevent a person's HIV infection from getting worse. This is also a serious matter that must be acted upon. When a person is also affected by this type of disease, their emotional and mental health may also be affected. Moreover, young people or adolescents health can be jeopardized if they lack knowledge on this topic or on sex education. It is a serious matter to have these kinds of diseases without taking medicine. If they have also this kind of disease, they may be affected emotionally, physically, and especially mentally due to bullying, discrimination, or ridicule from others. And now, let's move on to the next part, which is the solutions and recommendations by Miss Lian Diray, Miss Daisy De La Torre, and Samantha Dineros.
Now let's proceed with the solutions and recommendations. Solution number 1 is to avoid negative health consequences. Live births by teenage mothers aged 10 to 19 years old in 2016 totaled in 203,085, which slightly decreased to 196,478 in 2017 and 183,000 in 2018. Still, the Philippines has one of the highest adolescent birth rates among the ASEAN members. Sex education teaches young people the skills that they need to protect themselves from unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted disease. Number 2 is to understand, value, and feel autonomy over their bodies. Comprehensive sexual health education teaches young people not only the basic concepts of puberty and development, but as well as those who have the right to choose what behaviors they engage in and refuse unwanted sexual activities. Number 3 is to understand healthy and unhealthy relationship. Keeping a healthy relationship involves skills that teenagers never learn, such as positive communication, conflict resolution, and negotiating sexual activity decisions. A lack of these skills can lead to unhealthy and even violent relationships among young people. Number 4 is to show dignity and respect for all people regardless of their sexual orientation or sex or gender identity. The past few decades have been a huge progress towards equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals. Nonetheless, LGBT youth still continues to face discrimination and harassment. LGBT students have reported sexual orientation harassment as well as the physical harassment. Number 5 is respects others' right to bodily autonomy. Some students have been forced to have intercourse, while the other student says that they have committed sexual violence. Good sex education teaches young people what constitutes sexual violence, that sexual violence is wrong, and how to find help if they have been assaulted. That's all, thank you. And the next are the recommendations that will be discussed by Ms. Stacy.
Thank you, Ms. Lian. Now let's move on to the recommendation. Recommendation number 1, parental guidance about sex education. According to a study titled Parental Involvement in the Sex Education of Their Children by Delorio C., Resnico K., and other more, it is necessary to provide a family perspective to help parents understand their children's sexual growth and development. Suggest some methods where parents can initiate and respond to sexual issues in the family. The most common problems in parent-child sex interaction are shame, lack of understanding, unresolved personal values, fear of encouraging sexual actions, and a lack of communications. Skills to conduct sex discussion. Research tells that children who are well-informed and comfortable in talking about sexuality with their parents are the least likely to have intercourse when they are adolescents. Lack of information poses a higher risk. Recommendation number 2, the advantages of contraceptives. Contraception can be used for family planning or to determine when and how many children a person will have. Additionally, it lowers teen pregnancy rates. Preventing pregnancy is easy, safe, and practical with the birth control pill. Additionally, it lessens acne, lightens and regularizes periods, and lessens cramping during the menstrual cycle. According to a study titled The Benefits of Oral Contraceptives by A.A. Cuba, oral contraceptive use has a number of positive advantages that have to be acknowledged in addition to its negative effects, which should be taken seriously. The pill's greatest benefit is its efficiency as a reversible fertility control tool, which frees women from the anxiety of an unintended pregnancy and all of its psychological, social, and medical ramifications. However, there are also a lot of non-contraceptive benefits. Through oral contraceptive use, especially among young women, many ovulation and menstrual symptoms including dysmenorrhea, premenstrual syndrome, irregular menses, menorrhagia, and ovulation pain vanish or are significantly diminished.
In our third point, must practice safe sex. Dagdag ko lang po kung bakit din natin ituro sa kabataan ang about sa sex education. Bukod sa necessity talaga ito, matuturo din natin sa kanila kung ano yung iba't ibang types ng sexual organs. Matuturo din natin sa kanila kung anong pinagkaiba ng sexual organs ng babae at sexual organs ng lalaki. Dahil as future educators, andito tayo para magbigay ng proper knowledge sa kanila. Hindi natin sila masasaway Kasi tayo, naging bata, aminin natin, naging bata din tayo, naging teenager din tayo. Ako, teenager ako may hormones ako, lahat tayo may hormones, lahat tayo may curiosity. Nasa kanya-kanya na lang ng tao kung paano nila minamanage yun. Pero most of teenagers, most of children, ay dumadating sa certain age na nakikurious na sila sa mga bagay-bagay. Kahit sabihin pa natin sila na, huwag mong gawin yan, mali yan, huwag mong gawin yan kasi hindi pa proper sa age mo. Hindi natin sila mapipigilan na gawin yung mga bagay na gusto nilang gawin kasi nga, natural instinct ng isang tao na gawin ang isang bagay na gusto talaga nila. Dagdag ko lang dun sa may point number 2, dun sa may the advantages of oral contraceptives sa may sinabi ni Daisy. Madami pang iba't ibang types ng contraceptives tulad ng sinabi ni Daisy na oral contraceptives, meron din calendar method, meron pull-out method, merong condom, meron tayong implant, meron tayong injection, at iba't iba pang types of contraceptives. Meron pang ang patch So, depende yun sa tao kung anong applicable sa kanila. Tayo lang yung bibigyan ng knowledge sa kanila kung ano yung mga different types of contraceptives. Nasa sa kanila pa din yun kung anong method yung gagamitin nila.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha Dineros. I'm Alona Cortez and I will be the one to discuss about the pros and cons of sex education. Sex education teaches the importance of consent, but there is a lack of skilled teachers in teaching sex education. Another advantage of having sex education is it makes young students become more aware, but for some, it can hurt the religious belief of the students. Next, it can reduce sexual activity between minors. That's the reason why it's really important to teach the subject to the student properly. Sex education also prevents teen pregnancy, but sometimes some parents react negatively because they think it could corrupt a student's moral standing and incline them to engage in sexual activity due to their curiosity. Lastly, students learn to communicate their sexual problems, but inadequate education in the subject can have opposite effects because they do not take it as a serious issue. For the conclusion, sex education gives young people the knowledge and skills they need for a lifetime of good sexual health. They learn how to have healthy relationships, make informed decisions about sex, think critically about the world, be a good ally to those who are marginalized, and more importantly, love themselves for who they are. Sex education that's culturally responsive and inclusive helps young people develop their social and emotional skills they need to become caring and empathetic adults. This type of sexual education early and often leads to appreciation of sexual diversity, development of healthy relationships, prevention of child sex abuse, improved social or emotional learning, and increased media literacy. It also helps young people to avoid unintended pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections. Sex education is really important to curb educational and health issues associated with young people, like what I've said earlier, such as teen pregnancies and sexually transmitted disease. Due to parents' inability to talk to their teens about sex, schools are the best place of providing sex education programs. Because of this, in the Philippines, sex education became part of the program K-12 under the supervision of Department of Education. Sex education among students can be provided through starting these programs early and by involving family members. Sex education should start at kindergarten, and parents should participate in the formulation and review of the sex education curriculum. The general purpose of sex education is to inform youth on topics including sex, sexuality, and bodily development. Quality sex education can lead to better prevention in STDs and unwanted pregnancy. Furthermore, it decreases the risk of having unsafe sex and increase responsible family planning.
In the next slide, we can see na andito po yung mga reference namin. Yan po. Thank you for watching!